All right, Chris.
All right, welcome, Coach Brian Ferentz. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can, Chris.
All right, good. I'll give you, as much time as you want to open the floor with some comments, and then we'll throw it out to some questions.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's good to be here with you guys, enjoying the heat wave outside as we finish preparation. Certainly a little warmer today than it was the last 2 days, but excited about the opportunity we have on Saturday. Really excited for the seniors. The offensive seniors we have their last time in Kinnick, and get an opportunity to do it in front of the fans, which obviously was missing last year. So expect a great crowd, great environment, and excited about what I think is a pretty stiff challenge. I think this Illinois defense is playing very well right now at this point in the season, and I'm excited to see if we can take another step forward on Saturday afternoon.
Thanks, Brian. We will start the questions this morning from Scott Dockman.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Doing well, Scott. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Wanted to ask you about kind of the process right now of breaking down your quarterbacks. Spencer obviously had a lot of equity in the system, 17 straight starts, 13 wins. Plus he went down with an injury. It wasn't at least officially performance-based. How do you kind of proceed going forward with him and Alex, especially once Spencer gets into full health?
Sure, and it was an easy decision 2 weeks ago because he really couldn't go. And it was an easy decision last week because he couldn't go either. So now you fast forward to this week where I think he's looked pretty good out there throwing the ball and moving around. Certainly back to health, and it makes it challenging, right? I think you bring up a good point. Equity, important, but so is immediate production, right? And it's kind of like in the past, I'd give you this analogy. One of the struggles I had moving from the offensive line to coaching the running backs seems like a pretty trivial thing, but deciding how to distribute playing time with the running backs when you have more than one guy is actually a little bit trickier than it sounds, right? And a lot of times you just end up riding the hot hand. You try to see who's running well, who's seeing things well, who's producing the most, and as the game goes, you go in that direction. Certainly I don't see our quarterback situation being anything like that, like, hey, you're going to take this series, you're going to take that series. I don't think that's going to benefit us as an offense. But when you look at the body of the work and the immediacy, I think you got to go with what you're seeing right now. That being said, no final decisions have been made. We'll probably talk about that this afternoon, and then certainly we'll finalize things as we move closer to Saturday. And I got to be honest with you, it's kind of nice to be in that chair where you can play dumb like a fox and be a little coy about your quarterback situation, right? Either guy could start on Saturday. In the past, I think that's something we've tried to avoid. We find ourselves here, we might as well enjoy playing that aspect of it, right? We'll see who gets under center to start the game. But, we feel really confident with both guys. And I can't say enough about Spencer. As you mentioned, kind of his resume going into that game at Wisconsin. And then I can't say enough about what Alex has done, since he stepped in that third series at Northwestern. So good problem to have right now. We'll have to deal with it.
Brian, the next question is from John Steppe.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Doing well, John.
So when you have kind of this transition from Spencer to Alex, how much as an offensive coordinator do you adapt the game plan? Because Alex's strengths are obviously a little different than what Spencer's strengths are.
Sure. And you have to think about that at any position. But I'd start here with the quarterback position. The most important part of that game plan aspect is, are we going to have to adjust how we want to operate, right? Or are we still going to be able to get in and out of plays at the line of scrimmage? Are we still going to be able to make some of the same adjustments out there and have some of the either-ors in that plan? And the answer with Alex is absolutely, right? So his command of the offense is very good. That certainly gives you a good jumping-off point because if you didn't have that when you went to the second guy, now you have to make some serious adjustments to how you're even trying to play offense. The more obvious, and I think speaks more to your question, right, when you talk about the physical attributes, certainly feel like Alex, moves a little better, right? Can make some plays with his feet, definitely pretty comfortable throwing on the run and moving the pocket. And I think you saw some of those things early in the game last week, right? One of those early third downs, we tried to sprint out. I think to start the game, we had a sprint out, right? Tried to come back to that later, a lot of nakeds, try to throw a double move off a naked, and just get him in those situations where he's using his feet and expanding the pocket that way. So, that's one of the things And then eventually, right, hopefully, if I have any creativity at all, maybe we get them running the ball a little bit at some point down the road here too. But certainly you want to be careful and judicious with that because of how we do want to play offense.
The next question, Brian, is from Chad Leistico.
Hi, Brian. Good to see you.
Chad, likewise.
This is kind of, I guess, a tricky question, but with what has been the biggest struggle, I guess, in having trouble moving the football statistically, yet at the same time having the 123rd ranked offense or whatever, you're 8-2, and you've kind of been opportunistic at times. How do you juggle that, I guess, as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I don't think it's a tricky question. I think it's a good question. They're kind of, it's a, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, right? It's like an oxymoron, right? To be winning, but to not be moving the ball as consistently as well as you'd like to. Certainly that's frustrating on some level, right? But at the end of the day, I think I've told you guys numerous times, right? The goal is very simple. Every day when we come in here Sunday and begin work on the next opponent, we're just trying to find a way to win the football game. That's really it. And I think that's our identity as a program, and it is our identity as an offense. I can't lie to you guys. Shoot, I'd rather be lighting up the scoreboard and doing all that stuff and be a genius. Boy, that'd be terrific, right? But my role is really simply to try to put our football team in the best position to win games. And that's ultimately what I try to fall back on, and the responsibility I try to take as seriously as it should be taken. So, certainly I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I do think we've made strides. Really going back over the last 2 weeks, I've seen a lot of improvement. I think our line is starting to come together. We got some young guys starting to play at a little bit higher level. Seeing us hit some runs that looked pretty good. And certainly in the passing game, we've seen some young guys come on and make some plays and make some contributions there. So, right now the goal is simply this. It's to find a way to win the football game on Saturday. That's the big picture goal, right? That's the macro. And I'm not sure it gets very micro because the next goal is simply get better. And we'd like to improve offensively, do things with a little bit more consistency. Thought we really took a step forward early in the game last week. Unfortunately, we turned the ball over there that last drive of the half. I think we'd gone about 30 yards in 3 plays. Felt like we'd found a little bit of rhythm, and then we cough it up at midfield. They turn it into a field goal. Credit to them. They play that same brand of opportunistic football. And so I thought we put ourselves in a little bit of a hole. We were able to find some big plays in the second half, but really only sustained one drive in that second half. And I think that's the biggest metric right now for improvement. Can we sustain some drives and stay on the field for the duration of the game without some of those lulls and some of those 3 and outs, right?
The next question, Brian, is from John Steppe.
Keegan's obviously had a heck of a true freshman year. What do you see as the ceiling for him, if there is a ceiling for him, in terms of his long-term growth?
Well, I'll tell you what. Right now, I appreciate the question, but what I'm most worried about is what I just told you for our whole football team, for our offense specifically, and my challenge to Keegan Johnson would be the same thing. Let's see if we can improve and be better this week. Certainly he's made improvement, he's made strides dating back to last spring, but then very measurably throughout the season, right? If you look at week 1 to now, certainly a lot of strides. It wasn't targeted in week 1 or 2, and then you had that big catch in the Colorado State game, and then you've steadily seen his targets and his production increase. I don't know that it's going to be that kind of game on Saturday, but what I want to see is improvement from him in every aspect of his game. I think he's, one of the things that I really admire and appreciate about Keegan. If you go back and I think it's like the second series, maybe the second or third play, might be the first play of the second series last week. We run a pin and pull play out to the field, and Keegan's out there burying the corner. I mean, he's got as devastating block as anybody on the field had. So the continued improvement, whether it's the run game, the pass game, the route running, catching the ball more consistently, I don't know if you can make more plays with it in your hands than he did last week, right? Where, basically, I think, we'll give Alex a little bit of credit for getting him the ball, but after that, he pretty much did it by himself. But the challenge right now is to, stay humble and hungry for improvement. And that's what I've seen out of him every week. So I won't go into prognostication about ceilings or anything like that. I think what matters right now is that we keep our eyes on the road, and that's really this week's game against Illinois.
The next question, Brian, is from Tom Kakert.
Hey, Brian. Hope you're doing well.
Tom, likewise.
wanted to ask you about the run game.
Sure.
The stretch play has been hit and miss this year. What is the key that's missing there where you guys aren't hitting it as consistent as you have in the past?
Yeah, I think you got to go back and unfortunately, right, and fortunately, however you want to look at it, I think I've said this before, offensive football is execution based. And when I say it's execution based, I mean it's execution based at all 11 spots, right? So it starts with the quarterback making sure we're not necessarily in the best play, but not in a dead play. And we've had issues this year where at times we haven't been running the right play, right? So that's the first problem. Then you got to talk about obviously the blocking, right? So whether it's the receivers on the perimeter or whether it's those inline guys or an insert block or a lead block, now you're talking about 8 other guys, right? Besides really, 9 other guys besides the quarterback and the ball carrier that have some kind of blocking assignment. And if that breaks down anywhere, you could have issues there, right? Doesn't always mean it. You look at, I know it's not a run, but shoot, you look at Keegan's little screenplay, right? We didn't block anybody. That was about as poorly drawn up. I'm not going to blame that on execution. Let's just say that was a bad play design. We don't block anybody. And he steps out of it and makes the play, right? So there's always that element where you can overcome some of that, but you make it hard on yourself. You make it hard on yourself, and then you're counting on them missing tackles or bouncing off guys or taking bad pursuit angles. Then after you get past the blocking, right, now you get to the running back and the ball carrier, and it starts with alignment, depth, where are we getting the handoff? Are we running the proper track? Are we detailed in our track? Are we seeing the read properly? And if you're doing all those things and you get something like the first play of the game last week, right, where the run just kind of squirts through there for about 15 yards and it looks pretty, and we're all happy about that. The amazing thing is we come back to that play later, and we are off by about a quarter inch at a couple spots, and it goes for 4.5 yards. And that's the difference in the run game. That's the frustrating part. And it takes repetition. It takes experience. It takes better play calling, frankly. And then it takes better execution, right? So when you look at the run game, you can't really pinpoint one thing consistently, which I think is certainly frustrating. Everyone has a hand in it right now. And starting with me, we have to find a way to improve that and get better. And I think we got a stiff challenge this week, but hopefully another opportunity to go out there and do that.
The next question this morning is from Scott Dockerman.
Yeah, Brian, I know you don't directly coach offensive line anymore, but one of your pupils, I guess, at center, Tyler Linderbaum, is he's going to be an Outland semifinalist. He's the favorite to win the Remington, all that kind of stuff. I know he's still got a couple games left, but how good is he? I mean, is he in the sheriff gallery category? Is he, how does he compare with maybe some other centers you've had? Because I mean, the last 3 multi-year centers that you've had at Iowa are all still on NFL rosters, including your younger brother.
Let me start here. I wish I could take credit for Tyler Linderbaum. You said he's one of my pupils. I wish I could take any credit for Tyler Linderbaum. I can't. And I wish I could take credit for Sheriff or some of those other guys you mentioned. I can't. And the way I would compare him to those guys is absolutely he's in that conversation. And the thing about Brandon Sheriff or Robert Gallery, who I was fortunate enough to be a teammate of, and when you look at guys like that and you look at Tyler, it's not about the football playing. It's not about the physical talent, which is exceptional. It's not about how they play, which is like ferocious, right? And it's not about how they prepare and train and all, which is beyond reproach. All those guys. The thing that I would say puts him in the category of those guys, the kind of teammate he is, the kind of person he is. He wants to be great. He comes in every day with a humility about him and a desire to improve. And I know that sounds corny. I know that sounds cheesy. To me, that's the highest compliment you could pay any player. He is a tremendous teammate. He's a tremendous worker, and he's trying to be the best version of what he is. When you take a person like that, and I think the only people who probably should take credit for him are himself, his parents and his grandparents, his community. This doesn't happen by accident. But when you take a person like this, or a Brandon Sheriff, or a Robert Gallery, and then you pair it with phenomenal talent and natural ability, that's when you get a special player. And so absolutely I put him in that conversation. He's a joy to be around. Again, I wish I could take credit. I wish any of us could take credit for him. All credit belongs, with Tyler and the work he's done with his family and raising him. And anything that comes his way is more than deserved. And I couldn't be happier for him. But I'd come back to what I told John too, right? The thing I appreciate about him is I don't think he's losing focus on improving and playing better on Saturday against Illinois. I really think that's where his focus lies all the time, which is a trick, and it's harder than it looks.
I could follow up really quickly.
Sure.
I mean, his tenacity and their tenacity was rare. I mean, I remember Brandon Sheriff against Ohio State in 2013. I seen Tyler blocking guys 10,
Sure.
15 yards down the field. The whistle goes and he kind of goes down with the player. Can you coach that, or is that innate?
You try to coach it, man. You try like heck to coach it. That particular brand of it, that level of it, shoot, if I could coach that, we'd have 10 guys besides Tyler doing that every play, right? That's a decision that a player makes, and it's rare. You can't coach it. You can encourage it. You can coach some of it, but when it's just a competitive gene, right? Like I'm in constant awe of our wrestlers. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that program and the way they compete, and the way those guys take the mat. The mindset that they have, that can't be coached. You can work on it, but it's got to be innate, right? And I don't think anybody would question either of the Brands brothers' desire to compete, right? It's not even a desire to win. It's a desire to compete and physically punish another human being. Tyler has that. I wish I could coach it. Scott, if I could coach that, I would just be a consultant and I would make the rounds and, everybody just be out there just being as physical as possible. But that's just, to answer your question, one person's opinion, you either have that or you don't. And I've been very fortunate in my career to be around players that do have that. And it's fun to watch and it's fun to be around. And you better enjoy it while you have it, right? Like, it doesn't last forever, so enjoy the show. It's like good art.
Circle back to John Steppe.
Speaking of the offensive line, how have you seen Tyler's shot grow from walk-on to now the player he is today?
Sure. Well, again, you go back to decisions that individuals make, right? And Kyler has made a choice to be a player. I respect that. Like a lot of walk-ons that we've had in our program, he got an opportunity, and he maximized it, and maximized it, got to the point where there was a trust level with him, and he was able to work in the lineup through some injuries and played well and really has never come out of it when he's healthy, right? So, I think, again, the credit goes to the player. The credit always goes to the player. I've been asked that before in recruiting, specifically on the offensive line, or about tight ends, like, oh, hey, you guys have developed tight ends. You do a great job with this, and that. I wish we could take credit for it. I wish we could take credit for Kyler's development. But players are the ones that make those decisions. Players are the ones that put the work in. Players are the ones that produce to the level where they become contributors or very good players, right? So all the credit lies with Kyler. It's the work he's put in, and really it's the toughness and the grit he's shown to persevere through a lot of hardship in his career. And I've been excited to be around him and see him every day because he continues to improve as well. I'm sure that he would have liked to have been healthy all year, but I got to tell you, from where I sit, he's playing his best football right now.
Brian, the next question from Chad Leistico.
Head coach talked a little bit about Tyrone Tracy's frustration yesterday, and I know he's in the offseason, he said he's always in your ear, hey, I'm talking to Brian about getting the ball. How have you dealt with that as his offensive coordinator? He's always publicly had your back. What are the conversations like when he has a little frustration, even that's filtered out into social media?
Yeah, what I would tell you about my conversations with Tyrone, I wouldn't tell you about them, right? The conversations I have with any player, are private, and they'll remain private. There's a sacred bond or line that I'm really not willing to cross, right? But what I would tell you is this. From where I sit, what I appreciate are players that want to help the football team. And I think there's no question that Tyrone wants to help the football team. he wants to win like everybody else. He wants to be a part of the solution. And I appreciate that, right? When things spill out to social media, hey, listen, I got to be honest with you. It's not the world we're living in. And for me, I'm saying social media. I'll quote the great Dave Chappelle and say that, I don't worry about Twitter because it's not a real place. So, and then I'd also follow up. I think Dave Chappelle's a pretty smart guy. He talks a lot about empathy. And when I'm dealing with a player, certainly a guy that's frustrated like Tyrone is, and rightfully so, I try to empathize. And I try to understand where he's coming from and how he's feeling, because that's my job ultimately, right? I'm a coach. My job is to help these guys. So, do I take offense to it? Am I upset? Absolutely not. Okay, absolutely not. Tyrone's been a valued member of this football team for a long time. He's made a lot of plays for our offense and our team, and I expect that to continue in the future, right? What has happened or transpired outside of the building on social media really of no consequence to me, to be quite honest, Chad.
Brian, we'll take 2 more questions. The first is from Scott Duckman.
I wanted to ask about kind of some of your misdirection, pre-snap movements, a lot of cases, the jet sweep motion.
Sure.
Whether or not they get the ball is just irrelevant. And it seems to, in some ways, affect the second level of the defense, sometimes the third level. What makes you kind of decide to do it a lot? You did it a few games ago, less the other day. And is it opponent based, or is it what you want to do going forward?
Yeah, that's like any offensive football, right? It's mostly opponent based. Certainly, it's become more of an element in our offense the last couple of years, and we use it a lot to try to affect the way the defense is either fitting the picture, right? The way they're aligned and trying to play blocks in the run game, or perhaps sometimes to get eyes in the wrong spot. So a lot of times it is opponent based, right? Really felt going into last week, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for Joe and what he's done up there in Minneapolis, and the defense that they play. They're very base, and I mean that in the highest complimentary way, right? They do what they do. They're not going to show you a bunch of different things. They're going to adjust what they do to what you do. They're very similar to our guys, right? So when you go play them, you're not always going to get their eyes in the wrong spot. You're not always going to get them looking where they shouldn't look. And then the way they adjust their defense didn't always feel like it gave us super favorable looks or matchups. Whereas a couple weeks ago, felt like there were some younger linebackers in the game. They're actually very similar defensive structure, but some younger linebackers in the game. You want to get eyes kind of maybe where they shouldn't be, get guys out of gaps. And then, also there's that coverage element to it. A lot of times you can affect coverage with any simple motion, but those jet motions, those fast motions, it forces a lot of movement on the snap and immediate movement. So if you feel like you can gain an advantage doing that, whether it's the pass game or the run game, certainly you want to have some element to the game plan with that in there. So it's definitely week to week. And then the third component of that is probably the most obvious one, right? Is the guy that would get the ball, is he a threat? And we feel like right now we have some good perimeter threats, whether it's Arlen, or whether it's Charlie, Nico's done it for us in the past, Tyrone's certainly done it. We have some guys that we feel like putting the ball in space is a good thing to do with them. Now, like I tell you, we go practice against our guys, that's not a good plan against our guys because they have all the adjustments now to basically, put that guy out of the game if you try to hand him the ball, right? So there's other ways to attack them using those motions. What you don't want to do is put the ball on the perimeter. I'd reference like what happened to Maryland in 2018, right? They came in with all the jet sweeps. I think that was Maryland, right? That win game, and our guys are hitting them in the backfield and doing all that. It's like any offensive football, right? You don't want to be too reliant on one thing, but if it's going to give you an advantage, absolutely you want to include it in the game plan.
The last question this morning, Brian, is from Tom Kaker.
Brian, I wanted to ask you about the increase in play action the last couple of weeks. Is that, Alex said it was part of the game plan. Is that sort of part of the game plan for him because he's more mobile, more comfortable in that? What is your thought process there?
Certainly I think that helps Alex. But Spencer's had success throwing that in the past. And, I just felt like when we came out of that Wisconsin game, I was myself, I was not pleased, right, with our identity. And that falls on me. That's 100% my responsibility, right? So what I want to try to do is try to get back to some of the things that I think we do particularly well, right? And play action is a big part of that, whether you're talking about the drop back play action, right, where we're staying in the pocket, or some of the play action, the nakeds and the sprints where we're moving a little bit, okay, or like a moving pocket play action. Also sets up some of your screen game. And then going back to Scott's question, you can incorporate some of the jet and the fly motion into that play action. So I just felt like that probably suited us. Those are things that I think we do well. And I want to make sure that we're trying to do the things that we do well on a weekly basis, try to give the players the best chance to be successful out on the field.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for your time this morning. Good luck on Saturday.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
You betcha.